This is the KFYO Morning Show, and we're going to go directly to the phones. We've got Scott Braddock on line one. Scott, how's it going?
Going well, Matt. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's great to talk to you. And, I was kind of texted you a little bit before we came on, and I was telling you there's just some questions right now I have about this census. One of the things I have is this coronavirus has made it where they're not going to, 10 years ago, what I remember is that if you did not fill out the census, then they were like mafia. I mean, they sent people to your house knocking on your doors, and they wanted to know. And I mean, even Saturday Night Live made jokes about it, like almost like they were, what do you call it? The Jehovah's Witnesses going by your door knocking. You know, I mean, but they did. They had their clipboard and they came by.
Oh yeah.
They're not going to be doing that this time.
The coronavirus has changed everything. I mean, can you think of any aspect of our lives that it has not impacted? It's real hard to think of one. When it comes to the census, it could not be more important, especially for rural areas, because if they get the count exactly right, Matt, places like Lubbock are already at a disadvantage to places like Dallas and Houston, of course. I mean, this is the way that so many resources get divvied up, whether it comes to education, health care, transportation, et cetera, and the way that power is allocated because of the redistricting that the legislature will do in 2021. It's all based on how many people are living in which places, right? And trying to count those people in a time when people are scared to even answer the door, which is true for a lot of folks. It just upends everything. There was a story in the Wall Street Journal just this morning about the idea that, sometimes they have to rely on estimates, because some of the bits of information get left out when people either don't fill out that form. Census Day, quote unquote, was earlier in the week, but you do still have until August to fill that thing out. That was extended, because of all this stuff. And you've got to take it seriously. It really does count. I can't stress it enough for rural Texas to have every single person counted and do whatever you need to make that happen.
So there were a lot of questions that they said they were going to take off the census. But one thing I did notice is that they did ask what your origin was. They even asked, with me, I put white because I'm a white guy, and they wanted to know where the heck I was white from. And I'm like, I don't know. What the heck? I mean, I'm supposed to know. I guess I'm got some German in me. I probably got some English. I mean, what the heck? Why can't I just put white? So anyway, I just kept skipping it until it let me go past. But man,
you can skip that one eventually. But they would like to know.
But then, one thing if you were in the country legally was supposed to not be on there, but it kind of is. I mean, it's very roundabout way, but they kind of asked that. Another thing that's on there that I thought they were going to take off was they actually asked if your spouse was same sex or if it was not same sex. Now, of course, you can skip a lot of these questions if you just keep going.
Yeah, they're not required.
But again, these are questions that I didn't think were going to be on there.
It's interesting. Over the years, the Census Bureau has expanded the kind of data that they gather when they do the count. The Constitution, and of course this is a constitutional function, the Constitution only requires that they count people, how many people there are. So if people don't feel comfortable answering those things, like you said, they can eventually skip those questions. But
it'll take you an hour, but you'll make it.
You'll make it. It does take about 5 minutes if you just answer all the questions. That's what a lot of folks were pushing earlier in the week. And I know you filled it out. Did everybody at KFYO fill it out?
I know, Chad, did you fill it out?
That?
Did you fill out your... No, he says he didn't fill the census out.
He didn't fill it. Thumbs down from Chad. Okay, all right. Well, make sure they all get it done.
Yeah. Here's another question that I have. Here in West Texas, is there anything at all that looks like we might lose a representative out here? Because I know that in the past that's happened. They've put Abilene and Lubbock together. They've moved Midland, Odessa around some. They've moved Amarillo around some. Is there any possibility we could potentially be melding the Amarillo and Lubbock areas together?
Yeah, this gets to the redistricting question question, and I think that the way that power is allocated, and by the way, that's the way people should think about it. Redistricting is one of those things that when people talk about it on the radio or you hear a speech or they talk about it on TV, people's eyes can glaze over. It sounds real boring. They're drawing political lines. What does that mean? If you think about it as allocation of power, that's the way to think about it, because it means Lubbock either has more power or less power, or Amarillo does, or Houston or Dallas does. We have had, look, there has been such incredible growth in the major urban areas of Texas over the last decade, and I don't expect it to slow down all that much, unless this coronavirus thing just ends up changing everything. I mean, I need to check this, Matt. I mean, we've had, over the years, about 1,100, 1,200 people moving to Texas every day. Obviously, that's slowed down some during this. But in the Houston area, especially in the suburbs in Dallas-Fort Worth, the growth has just been incredible, and you know that they're going to get some more representation because of that, because after the count is done, we figure out where all these people are. Some of these districts are going to get, we like to say it this way, those districts sort of get sucked into the urban areas, which means that in the places like Lubbock, like Amarillo, like Abilene, et cetera, some of those districts get consolidated. So I think you have two representatives for Lubbock County right now. Is that right? Basically, and
right.
It could be that you end up with only one. And when you look at the way some of these districts may be configured, it may be that they look sort of like, a guy like Fort Price from Amarillo represents part of Amarillo, and then the district goes all the way down to the Fort Worth suburbs. I mean, I'm exaggerating a little bit,
but it's possible.
But it is possible,
right.
And the way that happens, a lot of times, is the more senior members of the legislature end up being deferred to for how those districts are going to look.
It's called gerrymandering.
It's called gerrymandering.
Or gerrymandering, according to who you talk to.
Gerrymandering, and and it's also incumbent protection. A lot of the senior members of the legislature, as I said, will get sort of deference when
they don't want you cutting their area in half.
Well, that's exactly right. And when you have somebody who's a freshman legislator, somebody who just got elected the year before, and they go in during a redistricting year, those are the easiest ones to cut out because they haven't built the relationships up just yet.
Yeah. Okay, one of the other things I wanted to talk to you about is we've got these emergency orders coming out of Austin from the governor. Number one is a lot of people have felt like these orders have been vague. They look at what the president's doing of the United States and how he's answering questions every single day. Have we had anything like that from the governor?
Anything I broke up a little
like
bit.
He's asking, as I was saying, the president is answering questions every single day.
Oh, yeah.
Have we seen anything like that from the governor, and has he been answering questions about these emergency orders?
The governor's been stepping up his PR effort on this, I would say. You do have the governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, who's doing his daily updates, and you do have more updates that have come out of California from Gavin Newsom, their governor out there. Our governor does have a press conference coming up this afternoon where it looks like they're going to open it up a little bit more for questions. At some of the press conferences recently with Governor Abbott, it's been very limited to only having 2 or 3 reporters there who could ask questions of the governor. At the press conference this afternoon, where they expect to talk more about hospital capacity, which of course is going to be key going forward, it looks like they're going to allow for more media to come in. But they did let us know that it's going to be restricted such that only one reporter from each publication can go, which I think is fine, that they have to maintain social distancing and all that. But, when they first started doing these press conferences, it was interesting. As folks were talking about social distancing, the idea that everybody needs to be at least 6 feet apart, the very first press conference, they might have gotten some criticism because there were people packed like sardines into the room, on that Friday a few weeks ago, when the governor first came out and did a press conference about all this.
So one of the things, and I know they're apparently still open, but in the first emergency order, the governor put package stores under grocery as well. The second one did not have them listed. Was there any question of whether those were going to stay open?
Yeah, there was some question about that. It looks like they are going to stay open, and the last executive order that was issued on Tuesday, which did cause some confusion, as you remember, the way the governor explained it, and then he came out with a video the next day saying, look, this is a stay-at-home order, even though if you read the text of the order, it doesn't really say that.
It doesn't say stay at home, right.
It doesn't say that, and it has the same quote-unquote essential functions and businesses that are listed by the federal government in their guidance, and it adds one thing, and one thing that's important, it adds churches, and that caused some confusion as well, because if you read the governor's executive order, he's saying that he would prefer it if people didn't gather in large groups, but his order absolutely says that if people want to go to church on Sunday, then they can do that because he's listed it as essential. And so it's going to be interesting to see whether people take him up on that. A lot of churches across the state have said they're not going to be doing the sort of traditional services, but there are a lot of churches that do virtual services, online streaming, and that sort of thing.
Well, one of the things that, as far as churches are concerned, that I think the governor was trying to do is not get the optics that they're having there in Florida, where they arrested a guy, one of the pastors. And I mean, when you and on top of that, they've been very, I guess, Second Amendment friendly as far as the emergency orders are concerned, and at the same time, I think they might want to be First Amendment friendly as well.
Yeah, I think that's probably right, although the public health concern, the health experts will say that does need to come first, and it's not unprecedented. They have asked churches to not have services previously in this country when there was a public health crisis.
Well, his first emergency order kind of mentioned churches as being closed down, and then the second one, he obviously opened it back up to some extent.
Yeah, and there was a lawsuit going on based out of Houston where some conservative activists had sued Harris County over the stay-at-home order issued by the county judge there. And those conservative activists said, look, basically it's a First Amendment thing. We have the right to, freedom of religion and to gather and all of that. But the public health concern takes precedent, according to the local officials. The governor seemed to, in his order, side with the conservative activists, saying that people can go on and go to church if they would like to. And I would like to say this, Matt. There are a lot of folks, elderly Texans especially, and people like this, wonderful folks, who it may be that in their life going to church on Sunday is the best thing that happens all week. We know some people around here who, they're in the nursing home, and they get to get out of the nursing home on Sunday just to go to church. And it's a wonderful thing to be able to go and worship. But that's why confusing messages about this are probably very unhelpful, because people would like to go on to go to church if they can, but if the public health recommendation is that for now they should not, then the governor should probably be as clear about that as he can be.
Well, and on top of that, these are what you're talking about. The elderly people are the ones the most vulnerable right now.
Absolutely. So causing confusion for them, very unhelpful.
So the last thing, what do y'all have on the I was going to say coronavirus. It's not the Quorum Report right now.
Almost all these publications are like the Coronavirus Report anymore, right? I mean, it's all anybody's writing about. Can you remember a time when political reporters, healthcare reporters, economic reporters, everybody, they're all covering the exact same story? I mean, it's not even that case with a hurricane. Maybe 9/11, right around the time that it happened. But we are going to be following what the governor's up to. This afternoon he's going to be talking about, and it's very important stuff, he's going to be talking about healthcare capacity, hospital capacity specifically. He's got a press conference coming up later around 2 o'clock, and we'll see what they have to say. There has been this order that says, this order in place that says that elective surgeries have to be skipped for now, and that's caused some controversy when it comes to the abortion issue, which we can talk about more later. But we'll get it all covered for you at quorumreport.com.
All right. Scott Braddock, editor of the Quorum Report, thanks for calling in, and we'll talk to you next week.